This is Total Growth Investing, where price growth is not enough. Dividend growth is not enough. We want to identify stocks, funds, and other investments that perform well in both of these measurements, because when we find them and buy them, we can beat the market over the long term. At least that's the goal. Just to get this out of the way, I am not a financial advisor. I'm posting this video for entertainment and educational purposes, and the opinions expressed are my own. I'm not monetized on this channel in any way, shape, or form, and I have no personal business relationship with any of the companies mentioned. We put out these disclosures often enough to get annoying because the alternative is the SEC getting annoying at us. My channel just hit 1,000 subscribers. Thank you very much. But I haven't posted a video since March of 2022. I thought it was time to give an update. The spring and summer of 2022 were very busy, and I got bogged down by some pretty big projects at home, scanning thousands of photographs from my family that I've collected after my mom and dad died in 2021. I'm still working on that and probably will be for a while yet, but I didn't want it to look like I'd given up on the total growth strategy. So I thought I would cast the net and ask what people wanted to hear about. Out of the 10 votes that I got, 6 of you wanted a video talking about my investment history and my portfolio. So here it is. As one of my favorite YouTube content creators says in his lead-in, grab a drink and a snack, we will be here a while. Extra credit if you know who that is. Some of you have probably seen my lessons learned, which is a Google document that I started when the answers I was giving on Facebook comment threads started to repeat themselves. And I figured it was easier to grab them for an easy copy-paste than type them from scratch each and every time. That document has evolved a lot since then, and I continue to add things. I started investing in 2000. I wasted 10 years throwing darts at stocks that I saw in the news, and then I wasted 10 more years hunting high dividends, thinking I could get rich quick by getting lucky. I wasted those 20 years until I actually started building a portfolio that will do what I want it to do. What I decided to attempt with the YouTube channel, the lessons learned document, and the ranking lists is to try to prevent others from making the same mistakes that I did. On June 12th of 2000, I put my first money into an investment account. It was ShareBuilder, a new broker out of Bellevue, Washington, that sold stocks in dollars, not shares, something I had never seen before. I put $45 into Texas Instruments, and I was able to buy 0.4535 shares. On August 21st of that same year, I received my first dividend payment from Texas Instruments. They paid me 1 penny. And because I had drip turned on, that went back to buy more shares, a whole 0.0001. I've received dividends from Texas Instruments every quarter since. In October of 2004, I saw the price was lower, and I dropped another $180 into the stock, buying 7.7261 shares. You can see in this chart how that investment has grown over the years, 2 decades worth. Some quarters I have turned drip on, dividend reinvestment, and the dividend has bought additional shares. And they have increased their dividend each and every year. That was a success, and I don't plan to sell Texas Instruments anytime soon. So 2 questions to answer. First, why did I buy Texas Instruments? Okay, I was just getting started. I had absolutely no idea how to find stocks, so I threw a dart. I looked for the mutual funds that had the best return. It was a technology fund out of Fidelity. I looked on the component list to see which company had the highest weight. That was Texas Instruments, and that was good enough for me. The second question is whether I would ever sell it. That decision comes from my ranking scores, which I will further explain in the video. But put simply, if the total growth or healthy income scores fall too low, I need a really good reason to keep it. Right now, Texas Instruments ranks at 283 for total growth, a solid hold, and 50 for healthy income, a very solid hold. I think I will be keeping these shares pretty much forever. The second stock that I bought was AT&T in November of 2000. Overall, I put almost $2,000 into AT&T or Southern Bell SBC, which merged into it. And over 20 years, what I got back out of it was about $3,900, most of which was reinvested into AT&T or other stocks. A nice return overall. The data for AT&T is harder for me to track because the company went through a number of spin-offs and mergers, and I had bought the stock in multiple accounts that don't seem to want to combine in any simple way. Again, some quarters I had drip turned on, some off. One highlight that I wanted to mention that in 2018, the drip return grew to the point where I was able to buy a whole share. When I finally sold all of my shares in April of 2022, my total return in dollars was $1,261.28. Not bad. Looking at AT&T, I'll ask those same two questions. First, why did I buy it? Well, because it was AT&T, and I was throwing darts. It is a very well-known company. It's been around for over 100 years. Why did I sell it? Because it wasn't performing well. Dividend growth is negative for 1, 3, 5, and 10 years, and the price has been declining since the peak of the dot-com bubble in 1999. I don't want my capital in securities that won't grow, and I use a ranking list because it runs a comparison between everything on the list against each other, so that the best of the best rises to the top. That's what I want to buy. AT&T dropped off the bottom of the list, and I don't want to put any capital into it. I only kept it in my rankings because I have friends who use my list, and they have not yet realized how bad of an investment AT&T really is. So the first stage of my investment journey was what I called a dartboard. Texas Instruments, AT&T, Hewlett-Packard, Eastman Kodak, Time Warner, General Motors, the spin-off of Comcast, Pfizer, etc. Of all of those, I only currently hold Texas Instruments and Comcast. And then in 2008, I discovered high dividends. This was a mess of mergers, renames, splits, reverse splits, whatever. It was interesting, and I honestly didn't lose that much, but it was annoying to track and was not getting me where I wanted to go. PHY changed to HCF, which I sold. I bought RSF, RHY, RMA, HSM, and I ended up after a few steps, everything was part of RA, which I sold in early 2020. These were high dividend mortgage REITs, which I will never touch again. Other things I bought during my high dividend hunt: MORL, MRRL, JRI, BFK, HSM, DPO, CSP, OXLC, don't get me started on that one, ECT, NRO, HTE, NBF, BEO, AGNC, which I hear about in the groups every once in a while, AI, RCC, CMO, CIM, BGY, CFP, IVR, ARR, DCIX, PER, IAE, AMZA, BKEP, CEN, REML, etc., etc. I even got into some micro penny stocks like Fern and MRNJ. Looking back at this period makes me just shake my head. I'm thankful to my friends and my family who kept asking questions and making me look at what was happening. I was getting a revenue stream, but my portfolio value was suffering. It took me so long to understand we need both in order to succeed. In December of 2019, I made the switch from high dividend hunt to total growth. About 4 months later, I cut the cord that tied me to the past, and I sold every single stock that my ranking list considered to be junk. I put the capital that came from those sales towards my Roth IRA, and then I spent a year watching my dividends drop by 90%. They hit bottom in June of 2021 and started building again. Slow at first, but I'm starting to see the kind of growth that I want. I could talk for hours about my history. I have the data because I've kept track of every transaction that I've done since that first deposit into ShareBuilder back in June of 2000. But what I really want to focus on is the total growth investing strategy, how it works, and why I'm focusing my portfolio on these ranking scores. Total growth is a ranking system that takes a number of points of raw data from Seeking Alpha and turns it into a priority list for further research. To me, the core idea of dividend growth investing is to identify the stocks that have the highest probability of growing their dividend over the next few years and decades. We also want stocks that have price stability or price growth over the same time period. The ideal stocks will be paying a higher dividend and have significant capital gains between now and when we want, need, or expect to sell that stock, if ever. So the current price of a single share of a company with that kind of growth in the near future and on the horizon is a lower consideration for me. I don't mind paying a few $100s for a stock with a rich history of growth, because those are the companies that I hope and expect will make me rich after holding them for a decade or more. And waiting with my capital on the sidelines, losing value at 7% per year thanks to inflation, does not interest me. One of the main objectives of sharing my ranking system is to break an old myth against the rocks. I see a lot of videos and articles giving the advice that people under the age of 40 should be investing in growth, and that they should not be investing in dividends. When I started looking into what was causing my portfolio to flounder in 2019, I realized something. These videos and articles are using one-dimensional thinking. They were trying to describe these two different measurements, growth and dividends, as if they were the ends of a line segment, where you had to sacrifice one to get the other. But in all the data that I was seeing on stock research sites, these two sets of data were clearly different. They moved differently, they changed based on different circumstances, and sometimes they aligned to great effect, while other times they showed a misalignment that caused major problems for a portfolio. I had fallen down that trap. What I had done during my high dividend hunt was to focus on the dividend side of that line, using current yield as my guiding star. I had created a spreadsheet with symbols from dozens of different high-yield stocks, and when I had capital to invest, I simply sorted my list by highest dividend yield and bought the stocks that paid the most per dollar invested. For a beginner, it seems so easy and so obvious. I started to see the risk over time, but I justified continuing down that path by looking at the revenue numbers that I was getting. My dividend revenue kept climbing. Between January of 2011 and March of 2020, my dividends grew from $238.24 per year to $3,160.55. I thought I was doing really well. Then in 2019, a friend of mine started asking me to look at the stock values for some of the stocks that I was investing in and what that value was doing over time. It took very little time for the truth to sink in. But thankfully, what I realized was that I should not overreact. Instinct told me that I should just sell the junk stocks, and I really wanted to. But what I needed was a plan. I needed to decide what I was going to use that capital to buy, and not just move it into US dollars without any other ideas, or worse, go back to the dartboard phase and just throw capital into whatever looked good. This is usually the point in the story where people start watching YouTube videos and reading books about how to value companies, how to calculate earnings per share, use the Chowder rule, or any number of other high finance terms that always sound to me like third-degree witchcraft. I didn't want to do that. I needed to keep things simple, just for my own sanity. I looked at the resources that I had and the methodology that I had been using. It was ranking lists. It had worked well to identify the highest yields. The question is whether it could be used to identify the best of a set of stocks based on both dividend growth and price growth, not just from their last quarterly or annual reports, but looking back at least a decade. That first step was to get more data, and I needed to find a source for data that was consistent and available. Starting with no available capital, it didn't make sense to pay for these services. So I found free sources and checked what kinds of data they had available. What I settled on was Seeking Alpha. Seeking Alpha was established in 2004 by David Jackson, a technology analyst who had worked for Morgan Stanley. This website is designed by retail investors for retail investors. The articles they publish are written by the members, and while they do have a paid side that goes deeper with much more analytical content, I found what I needed within the free login level. Basic data on dividend yield, dividend growth, price growth, total return. It was consistent and kept up to date as much as possible. It's not perfect, which means there are humans behind the scenes doing the heavy lifting, and that's something that I can respect. Nearly all of the data that I use for the total growth ranking system comes from their pages. This video is getting longer than I expected, and I have a public document that describes how the data is collected, how the ranking calculations are done, and how I use it to build my portfolio. I will share the link to that document in the description below. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. As long as I can get the data that I need, and as long as the internet works, this strategy will keep building my portfolio balance and my revenue stream. My goal is to be able to pay my expenses through the dividends that I earn from the stocks and funds that I buy, without having to sell any of my assets. I have 12 years, and I'm confident that I'll make it. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you liked this video. I won't wait until I get 2,000 subscribers to make another one. I promise.